Would you like some coffee?
Yes.
No, don't do that like that. I'll take care of it.
No, it's no problem.
We're sitting in my 1992 Geo Metro XFI with air conditioning added from a 1995 Geo Metro with a brand new condenser, brand new compressor, brand new dryer, running synthetic ultra some whatever it is fluid in it, and PAG 150 oil. We're testing my new circuit board that helps control the on-off of the compressor at idle. We've adjusted the base idle back down to factory spec 650 plus minus 50. And now we're watching to see what happens. Before, every time the air conditioning compressor turned on, the car would stall out. Didn't do it with the old 95 compressor, but the brand new one, it couldn't turn it. So I made that. Seems to solve the problem. You'll also notice that this car is idling very smoothly at 700. The base idle is actually set at 600. The factory manual calls for 650 plus minus 50 for a 600-700 spread. You disconnect the idle air control, set the idle at 600, plug in the idle air control, and it jumps up to 680. That idle air control will boost the idle up on the car as electric demand is called for from the headlights and the blower motors. It will not increase it for the air conditioning. That's a totally separate air unit that I had to add to the car. And I had to get one for a 92 XFI and splice it into the 95 AC. That's the one with the big screw that lets you adjust the idle of the car when the air conditioning is on. So what I did to solve this problem was the air conditioning idle up air control, which is adjustable, and the air conditioning air compressor both turn on at exactly the same time. The car is still running at base idle. That load kills the engine and stalls it. What it needed was a delay between the air conditioning idle up happening and the compressor turning on, hence the circuit board. The circuit board is 5 volts using a 5-volt chip, power chip. It gets its power from the 12-volt idle up air conditioning air control unit. So when the air conditioner amplifier turns on the idle up air conditioning control unit with 12 volts, it also energizes this board. This board has a 555 timer chip in it. And if we didn't have autofocus, you could probably see it. It's right there in the mix of all that mess. And it's been set up and programmed using some resistors and diodes and capacitors to fire up pin 3 after 2 seconds of being energized. So what happens is when the air conditioning amplifier in the Geo Metro says I want to turn the compressor on, it turns both the compressor and the idle up unit on. The idle up unit's power is powering this board, which powers this board up. This board then waits 2 seconds and sends 5 volts out on pin 3, which energizes a relay over here. This relay has 2 contacts which are normally open. They close after 2 seconds, and they've been sent to the air conditioning compressor's relay under the hood. By breaking the ground on that relay under the hood to its coil, it can't turn on unless this relay turns it on, and this relay won't turn it on until after 2 seconds of the air conditioning being called for. That gives the engine time to spool up a little bit, and I've got it timed so perfectly now that we don't even actually see a spool up happen. it appears very transparent. Let's watch. There's no air conditioning demand right now. I'm running it on low. The unit inside the car, the evaporator, and look at that. Look how smooth that is. First it idled up, then the compressor turned on. And then it idled almost right back down to factory spec. And I mean, I'm sitting here zoomed in, sitting in the driver's seat. I'm not shaking all over the place from vibration. The car is idling smooth, with or without air conditioning. In a few seconds, the air conditioning should cut off. De-energizing the unit, dropping the relay, cutting off the idle up. That will all happen simultaneously. When it turns off, it all goes off at the same time. When it turns on, there's a 2-second delay before the compressor is called for. Let's watch. There's tiny shutter as the RPM dropped below 600, and now it's 630. Now the air conditioning's off. We're waiting to see it come back on. And there it goes, it's back on. And we can go back to watching our movie, and the stick shift, which indicates vibration. That's why it's there. The big gigantic skull.
Years.
Because if it was vibrating, we'd see this going on,
I like you, Jane.
which it has done
Where
before.
were you when I was 16 years old? Never mind the slender man. I don't want to know. Bye. We get the camera somewhere where you just hold it. I know you see me, Mr. Pritchard, so you might just as well look up.
Good afternoon, Miss Hardy, and goodbye.
Air conditioning is
very
off.
Busy. I simply haven't got time.
I've signed the papers and stayed in Blackford.
I trust you still mean to put the house on the market when you leave in the fall.
I might not be leaving them.
The air conditioning is on.
What the hell are you talking about?
I simply haven't made up my mind yet.
Well, I'm damned if you do. A few days ago, I heard you were so damn scared, I thought I'd never see you again. Now you're talking about living here.
Here are the papers. When are you going to get them filed?
This is late Friday afternoon. I'm not about to be going over to the county seat. I'll get around to him on Monday. No, Tuesday.
Monday.
Seems to me you're acting damn cocky. What the hell's going on here?
Nothing.
I ran into that young Gordon boy you hired, Paul. Took the liberty of asking him a few questions.
My personal life is none of your business.
Paul seemed completely bent out of shape. Something about another man named Tom.
Richard, why don't you just climb into the back of that silly old hearse of yours and drop dead?
See the little shutter when it turns off? I can fix that too with another timing chip. Bring it down a little bit slower, but it's really nothing to worry. If I boosted the base idle of the engine up about 50 RPMs, it would stop, but I've got the engine idling really low right now. And it goes back on. And there's the compressor. So, let's take a look at this board. It's if I can tilt it up a little bit.
Sullivan, Thomas.
There's not really a whole lot here.
Okay.
Forget that chip there. It's not even plugged in or doing anything. It's a 12-volt version of the power chip
Maybe it's not listed.
that just takes in 12 volts and puts out 12. I'm using this one, which takes in 12 and puts out 5.
Okay.
It's got a heat sink bolted to it. So that gets its power. Let me turn the stupid movie down.
Tom, I was wondering what...
So that gets its power from the air conditioning idle air control valve. When the air conditioning amplifier, which is what they call it, it's a computer that turns on the air conditioning. When it turns on that air control unit, it powers up that chip, which starts making 5 volts on this board. Everything on this board can run at 5 volts or higher except for that relay. It's a 5-volt relay. That energizes the 555 timing chip. 8-pin chip. I know it's kind of blurry, but this thing's got stupid autofocus, so using really only 5 of the 8 legs. And basically you've got on the top left of the chip 5 volts going in, on the bottom left of the chip your ground. So now your little chip's fired up and running. And on the top of the chip, the second pin from the right, which would be pin 6, is jumpered to pin 2. That's that green wire right there, jumping around. And then there's a capacitor there, and then there's a resistor somewhere. And what it does is it compares the two voltages. And with a capacitor and a resistor and a diode, it takes 2 seconds for it to charge that leg up. And when that leg matches the power leg, it starts sending out a ground on pin 3 of this chip, saying, okay, all the metrics have been met, and then that sends out a ground to the 5-volt relay. So it's really pretty simple. By delaying how long it takes to power up pin 3 using a capacitor and some resistors, you can delay how long it takes a ground to go out on pin 3. The 5-volt relay, which has electrical tape on it so it doesn't fall out, always has power on the positive side if the board's powered, but it doesn't have a ground. It gets its ground from the chip. So once that happens, it sends, that relay closes and sends the ground back to the air conditioning control unit. Compressor relay. It's all a lot simpler than it sounds. A lot of the Geo Metros have different ways to handle the air conditioning idle up. On this one, 89 and 94, they use this big thing here. It's just 12 volts. When it turns on, it lets the air flow between these two hoses, and that idles up the engine, and you can adjust the air conditioning on idle here. The base idle for the engine adjusted down there. These are my 2 air conditioning relays. This is the air compressor, and all I've done is I've taken my wiring up through here, pulled one leg off the relay, and jumpered it with my relay in there. Right now the air conditioning's on, the compressor's spinning. We'll be at about 700 RPM. And now it's off. You can hear my tire go, it's rubbing against the plastic housing. That's the only thing keeping the belt from flying off. It needs a new tensioner. Tensioners go bad and they make the belt track right or left off the sprockets. And now it's on. I can even hear the hissing. When that valve first turned on, all the hissing. It almost sounds like a leak. I'll have to check into that and look. It sounds like it's actually got a leak going on. Once it started energizing the valve. Could just be because it's got so much air flowing through here and you're hearing it up in the air cleaner because it's sucking it in here. Providing more into the manifold to boost up the idle. So it might just be indicating that it's working really good. Although when I move this, I hear a little bit. And I used an old hose, so it could have a hole in it. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. I'll have to check it out and see. It would definitely help if it doesn't have any leaks. It would only work better. I should replace all of these hoses. I've also got to grease my ball joints. They're starting to creak. I just put them on there, but I didn't grease them. My brand new 95 air compressor. 200 bucks. You have to track down and see where that air's coming from. Now it turned off, the air stopped hissing. What I should do is hook these two hoses together and see if I still hear the air hissing. Track it down. But it might just be that it's a normal sound. Running the fan running. There's a second idle control unit on this car way down here. It goes into this bunch of hoses. That idle, you know, here listening in, that idle's for when your fans cut on, when your brake lights are on, when your blower motor turns on, when your headlights turn on. It goes to a board that has a whole bunch of resistors on it. And as the load increases, it starts messing with that little box, sending more and more air into the car, but it's not enough to control the air conditioning compressor. It's only enough to boost up the idle to offset the load from the alternator for electrical demand. So there's actually two of these hose-related electrical tied-in idle control units on these cars. One if it doesn't have air conditioning, two if it does. And if it does, the second one is this one with all the screws, or with the screw to do all the adjusting of the idle. Only when the air conditioning's on do you adjust that one. So I'm gonna go drive it around with no hood. The hood's right there. The hood's all screwed up. I had it on here, and it's got a broken hinge. And I don't dare leave it up on the little strut with this engine vibrating and stuff because it could fall down, and the last time I did it busted my windshield out, so now I take it off. Hopefully my hinges will be here in a few days. Let's get back to our movie. It's still in progress. Now, this is my MPG Guino. It's modified, custom firmware that I made.
Oh God, no, not this child.
As you can see, it's not the normal one because it only has two screens. I took all that, those other screens out and I reordered what was on the screen, so I didn't have to jump between screens to see stuff. And no, I can't make one for you because the software is actually licensed from somebody over in Russia or something. And I promise never to give it to anyone else, and I won't.
It doesn't matter. I can give you eternal life.
Me too.
Our love just
Dunkin' Donuts.
sweet. Jane, I love you. I need you.
And I'll tell you something else, this board, by changing the capacitor values, resistor values, I've actually got a small screwdriver type varistor, variable resistor. You can modify this whole setup to work anywhere from just over 0 to 30 seconds or even hours, but I wouldn't do that because it's not very stable then, but 0 to 30 seconds is definitely doable. So if you've got something else you got to delay on or delay off up to 30 seconds, this setup can do it. And you're talking about like under $20 worth of junk, a lot under $20. I mean, this breadboard costs more than all that stuff. It was like $21. You can't see because of that glare. I don't get all that glare when I'm looking at it. This is optical illusion. Probably because I'm up here. Here's my point of view. See, the Geos are so incredible that 20 years ago, they knew you would have these huge in-car DVD players, so they made sure the hole perfectly fit and the depth was there, because that just slid the hell in that hole. Installation, 1 minute. It's still not installed. The whole thing pulls out. Like that. It's incredible. I need to order a new off of eBay. I gotta find one of these. I got one that's got a little bit of a crack in it that's
Are you sure?
still together, but I want to find one that's pristine,
Well, maybe it's not
which is going to be almost impossible to find. Air conditioning on and compressor on.
Okay. Thank you, Audrey. Tom, I was wondering what... Yes, I was expecting...
Well, there's no doubt that this is one of the finest Geo Metro XFIs in America, or dare I say, the world. When I got it, it had 60-some thousand original miles, one owner. Engine compression is 149, 150, 151. Actually, that's not right. That was when I did it wrong. I just did it the other day. Engine compression is 201, 200, 201. Factory spec is 199. You want to buy this car? You don't have enough money to buy this car. It's not for sale. I need to put my antenna up. I always put it up and then put it down and then put it halfway down. I only need that much antenna, plus it looks cooler. We were going to the drive-in movie last night, so we've got fold-out chairs, jumper cables, and a 12-volt lithium battery in case the battery died from leaving the stereo on for 5 hours. Because, oh yes, it has a stereo. It has rear speakers. Too much glare, I can't see. And not only does it have rear speakers, let me turn this shit down. It of course has the front speakers. It has the rear speakers, but it also has hidden underneath there, poured in yellow foam, expanding foam all the way around the car. Provides insulation from sound and temperature, and it is molded to the inside of all of this. There's foam under that right there, and it's cut in and goes up, and there's speakers here, 6x9 coaxials that are mounted inside the foam. This car, unlike other Geo Metros, is dead quiet inside going down the road. We don't hear road noise, we don't hear water splashing on the wheels and all that mess. And the weight added from the foam, about 1 pound. And there is a crap load of it. It goes all the way around. It's like 20 cans of foam in here. Yes, it's badass. And it's all stock. Let's see, it's got now 83,000 original miles. See? Carfax verified. One owner. When I got it, 60-some thousand, so I put a little bit of mileage on it in a year, a little over a year. I don't think there's anything on this car that doesn't work. Let's go for a ride.